During most of the Game Boy Advance era, THQ were the license holders for the Star Wars games on that platform. Many of these games were sadly lackluster experiences. Their first game was a port of Jedi Power Battles. While the console versions were flawed but fun experiences, the GBA port felt like a watered-down game. Their next project was a game based on Episode 2. This is easily one of the worst GBA and Star Wars games. The level design is incredibly lazy as you spend most of your time going to the right, with breaks for combat. Using your lightsaber has no weight to it, and these encounters quickly became tedious. There were some instances of platforming, and it was hard to judge if your character would land on a platform or just fall right through it. Some vehicle levels were used to change up the action, and while these levels were a bit better than the side-scrolling ones, they had their own issues like being a mess to look at. This game was an insult to the film and the fans. THQ tried shifting gears, focusing on the original trilogy, and the gameplay would be focused on flying a variety of ships and vehicles. Flight of the Falcon was their attempt to create a portable Rogue Squadron type game, and it was not good as well. In many of the levels, it was incredibly hard to tell the difference between a TIE fighter and a star. Many of the levels also suffered from horrible frame rate issues. It was a rough time for Star Wars fans on the Game Boy Advance. Thankfully, following THQ's run, better games would be made, but there was one THQ game that had a great amount of flaws, but was actually pretty decent and kind of fun. Released right after the Episode 2 game, Star Wars The New Droid Army would be an original story that took place between Episode 2 and 3, and this was easily THQ's best Star Wars game on the GBA. Star Wars The New Droid Army can be a pretty fun dungeon crawler. The action is mostly fun with a variety of droids and other characters to fight. The lightsaber combat is miles better than Episode 2, and the original story is pretty good as well. Overall, the game feels like it could have benefited from another year or so in development. There are many mechanics that feel like they needed to be playtested and refined further. For example, like how using your basic attacks uses your Force power bar. This honestly makes no sense. The New Droid Army is a bit of a mixed bag, but it's also easily the only game I would suggest trying that THQ was involved with. The New Droid Army centers its gameplay as an isometric dungeon crawler. You are armed with your lightsaber and force powers. Generally, the lightsaber combat is enjoyable in this. The sound effects are decent along with the impact of your hits. Some nice touches are how droids will break in half when defeated. You can also choose to block laser blasts with your lightsaber and reflect them back at your enemies. Something else I liked about this is if you swing your lightsaber as a blast is coming in, that blast will reflect off and in some cases hit your enemy. So you do not always need to use the block button to pull this off, and in some cases when you're dealing with one melee enemy and a ranged fighter, this can come in handy. As you progress in the story, you will slowly earn more force powers to use. You start off with speed to quickly get around traps, close the distance between an enemy, or run away to heal. Force jump is used for a similar effect, along with getting past holes. Force push allows you to push someone down, and get up close for a quick kill. Hide allows for some stealth, and heal is very useful. Combat is generally good when fighting against multiple melee foes, and the least amount of ranged fighters. We will get into this more in the flaws section, but contending with some of the super battle droids can be really cheap, as you feel like every move you make will cause you damage, and the combat has some other odd decisions like how the Force power bar works. You will explore a variety of locations from many spots on Tatooine and on Coruscant. When it comes to objectives, sometimes you will need to defeat a set amount of foes, find an item, or even rescue some allies. The story itself is better than I expected, and kept my interest. It starts off with a little mystery as you are investigating matters related to a new battle droid. This eventually leads to a confrontation with Dooku. The New Droid Army is easily the best Star Wars game on the GBA that has THQ on the box, but it sadly still has issues issues that creates a more mixed experience. For one, whenever you use your lightsaber, this will deplete your force power bar. This is such an odd decision. It makes me think that the developers wanted the force power bar to double as a bar for force powers and as a general stamina bar, when if the game allowed the player to have one bar just for force powers and another related to their stamina actions, this would have worked a lot better. Regular fights can easily deplete your force power bar, and without it you're pretty much dead. This also factors into a big issue with the game: the pacing. Anakin moves way too slow, and if you use your force powers for speed, then you will have nothing for when you're in a fight. So this means you're going to be walking everywhere. On top of this, the only way to earn back health until you can use force meditates is to stand still and wait for your health and force powers to come back. You can sheath your lightsaber to do this quicker, but it still takes a long time. This means that in many levels you will be hurt from a fight and be forced to stand still to wait for your health to come back before it's a good idea to move again. Along with this, many levels can be way too big and feel like they are stretched out for the sake of increasing the game's length. And when paired with this regeneration problem, some areas feel like a slog to get through. Now, these big levels could have been designed better to allow you to find healing items or secret items, but that isn't the case here. New Droid Army has some other issues, like how you can easily miss a force jump and be sent back to the last checkpoint. Some enemies are needlessly too tough as regular foes, and come across as very cheap, along with some of the boss encounters. The game doesn't feel built for dealing with multiple ranged enemies at once, as trying to contend with them always netted in taking needless damage. I did find it odd that the game is designed like a dungeon crawler, but there's no RPG mechanics here. I honestly think a simple leveling system would have done wonders for this game. For example, you earn experience points for killing enemies and completing objectives, and you can use these points to then improve your health, regeneration, attack power, and defense. I did have some fun with this title, and honestly I found myself having more fun with the first half of the game more than the second. Star Wars: The New Droid Army is a bit of a mixed bag, and you can really see what the developers were going for with this one. I honestly think they could have achieved a better game if they were able to get more time in development. The combat is generally fun, especially when fighting melee enemies. The issue comes up when fighting against multiple foes who are ranged fighters. The biggest issue that needed to be addressed was how you earn your health back, and how that hurts the pacing of the game. Having a regeneration system can work just fine, but it's way too slow here, meaning that you will need to stop after most encounters, so that you can be in better condition for your next fight. Honestly, if there was a more traditional leveling system here, where you could improve your regeneration, then you could put points into this area and we probably wouldn't have this issue. Or if the game allowed you to pick up and use healing items for instant health recovery. The absence of this stuff makes me feel like this game did not receive the proper amount of playtesting to refine these areas of the game. New Droid Army stands out from the other THQ Star Wars games because there is some love and care put into this title, and you can see what the developers were trying to achieve, whereas the other games are mostly universally bad. This is a bit of a tricky game when recommending it, because for casual fans I think there's way too many flaws to outright recommend it, but for big Star Wars fans I think this is at least worth trying, as it does have some quality. If you're interested in being notified of new videos, please hit the subscribe button and bell, and if you'd like to support the channel and get early access to content, please check out my Patreon. All of the links will be at the end of this video and within the description, and thank you very much for watching.